Bate had been hauling cargo across the stars for 30 years. She knew every trade route, every fueling station, and every shortcut through the empty spaces between worlds. Her ship, the Steady Dawn, was old but reliable. It carried medical supplies to colonies that needed them and brought back minerals that Earth factories required. It was honest work. It was quiet work. Bate liked it that way. The year was 2347, and humanity had joined the Galactic Assembly almost a century ago. 47 species worked together in this great alliance. They traded goods and shared knowledge and kept the peace. Humans were respected as clever traders and fair diplomats, but most aliens saw them as physically weak and politically unimportant. Humans were small players in a very large galaxy. Bate was 3 days out from the colony on 7B when her communication system detected something strange. It was a distress signal, broken and fragmented, repeating on emergency frequencies. She adjusted her sensors and tried to clean up the transmission. What she heard made her blood run cold. The signal came from Arcturus Station, a mining colony on the edge of human space. 3,000 people lived there, families and workers and children. The message was from the station commander, and his voice was filled with terror. They had attacked. The defense garrison was dead. Everyone on the station had been taken hostage. Bate knew about everyone did. They were a militant empire that operated outside assembly space. They had 4 arms and gray skin and eyes that showed no mercy. For decades they had raided frontier colonies belonging to various species. They took what they wanted and killed anyone who resisted. The assembly condemned them but never acted against them directly. Politics always got in the way. She immediately contacted Earth Command and requested Admiral Frank. He was 68 years old and had served humanity for over 4 decades. His face appeared on her screen within minutes. The lines around his eyes told her he already knew. "The situation is worse than you have heard," the Admiral said. "The commander has made demands. He wants the Assembly to surrender 3 star systems to the Confederation. If they refuse, he will execute 100 hostages every galactic cycle." Bate felt sick. That was roughly every 18 hours by Earth time. "How many has he killed already?" she asked. 20, the Admiral replied. "He broadcast the executions across all frequencies. He wants everyone to see." "What is the Assembly doing about this?" Bate demanded. The Admiral's expression darkened. "Nothing. They are holding emergency sessions and debating response options. They chose their target carefully. Arcturus Station has no strategic value to anyone except humans. Most assembly species see this as our problem to solve, and officially we cannot act without assembly approval." Bate understood what he meant by officially. She had served under 30 years ago before she retired to civilian life. She knew the Admiral was not a man who followed rules when innocent lives were at stake. "What are you planning, Frank?" she asked quietly. The Admiral looked at her for a long moment. Then he spoke a phrase she had not heard in decades: Protocol Sigma. Bate felt her hands grow cold. Protocol Sigma was a ghost, a rumor, a story that soldiers whispered about but never confirmed. It was said to be a list of names, 12 names, the most dangerous humans alive, people who had been trained to do things that no civilized society would admit to needing. They existed in no official database. They answered to no government. They simply waited until someone called them. "I thought that was just a legend," Bate said. "Every legend starts somewhere," the Admiral replied. "I need your help. You are already in the region and your ship is unremarkable. No one will notice you. I need you to transport a team to a staging area near Arcturus. Can you do this?" Bate did not hesitate. Those people on that station were her people. Human beings who woke up one morning and found themselves in hell through no fault of their own. She would do whatever it took to bring them home. "Tell me where to go," she said. The Admiral sent her coordinates to an abandoned mining facility in the asteroid belt of a nearby system. She was to arrive in 4 days and wait. The team would come to her. After the transmission ended, Bates sat alone in her cockpit. She stared at the stars outside her window. Somewhere out there, 3,000 people were praying for rescue. Somewhere out there, they believed they had won. They believed humans would negotiate or beg or watch helplessly as their people died. They did not understand what they had done. They had studied human diplomats and traders and scientists. They had seen humans smile and shake hands and compromise. They thought they knew what humans were. They were wrong. Admiral sat in his private office after the call ended. He was alone. The room was dark except for the glow of his computer screen. He pulled up a file that officially did not exist. Inside were 12 profiles, 12 faces, 12 people who had sacrificed everything normal and good in their lives to become weapons. Some of them had been soldiers who went too far and were quietly erased from military records. Some had been intelligence operatives who learned skills that no government wanted to acknowledge. Some had simply been ordinary people who discovered they had extraordinary capacity for violence when pushed. The Admiral began sending messages. Each one was encrypted with codes that would erase themselves after being read. Each message went to a different corner of human space. Each message contained only 3 words. Retribution is calling. One by one, the responses came back. Simple acknowledgments, brief confirmations. Within 6 hours, all 12 had replied. They were coming. On Arcturus Station, commander of the stood before his prisoners. He was tall even by standards. His gray skin was marked with scars from countless battles. His forearms were crossed as he watched the humans huddle together in the main habitat dome. These creatures were pathetic. They cried and held each other and begged for mercy. Had conquered many species in his career. Humans were among the weakest he had ever encountered. Their skin was soft. Their bodies were fragile. They had no claws or armor or venom. How they had ever survived their own world was a mystery. He had chosen this station specifically because humans were politically weak in the assembly. No one would risk war with the Confederation over 3,000 insignificant minors. The humans would watch their people die, and eventually they would pressure the assembly to give what he wanted. It was a perfect plan. He was certain of victory. He did not notice the shadow of the steady dawn passing through the distant stars. He did not know that 12 ghosts had just been awakened. He did not understand that he had made the worst mistake of his life. Retribution was coming, and it would not negotiate. The asteroid belt of the Telos system was a graveyard of abandoned dreams. 50 years ago, mining companies had built stations here to extract rare minerals. Then they discovered richer deposits elsewhere and moved on. The stations were left to drift among the rocks, forgotten by everyone. Almost everyone. Bate guided the steady dawn through the debris field toward coordinates that should have been empty. When she arrived, she found a station that looked dead from the outside. No lights, no signals, no signs of life. But when she transmitted the code Admiral had given her, a hidden docking bay opened in the station's side. She was the first to arrive. Over the next 3 days, 11 more ships came. They appeared one at a time from different directions. Some were cargo haulers like hers. Some were personal shuttles. One was a prison transport that officially had been destroyed in an accident 2 years ago. Each ship carried a single passenger. Bate watched them gather in the station's main hall. They did not look like monsters. They looked like ordinary people you might pass on any street on Earth. A woman with gray streaks in her brown hair. A man with a friendly face and laugh lines around his eyes. A young man barely 30 who carried himself like he was already tired of life. But Bate had seen soldiers before. She knew what real warriors looked like when they stopped pretending to be normal. These 12 people moved differently. They watched everything. They positioned themselves so their backs were never exposed. Their eyes measured distances and calculated angles even during casual conversation. The woman with gray hair stepped forward. Her name was, and she was 45 years old. According to official records, she had died in a classified operation 8 years ago. Her body was never recovered. Her family had been told she was a hero. They never knew she was still alive and working in shadows where heroes could not survive. Looked at the group and waited until she had their attention. Then she spoke. "You all know why we are here. Arcturus Station. 3,000 civilians, 400 soldiers. The assembly will not help them. The military cannot help them without starting a war, so we will help them." A man with broad shoulders and a scar across his chin laughed quietly. His name was Vega, and he was 38. He was a demolitions expert who could build bombs from kitchen supplies. He had once collapsed an enemy bunker using only fertilizer and cleaning products. The military had decorated him 3 times and then erased him completely when his methods became too effective to acknowledge. "What are the rules of engagement?" asked. His voice was cheerful, but his eyes were flat and cold. Answered without hesitation. "There are no rules. There are only objectives. We get our people out alive. We make sure to never try this again. Everything else is acceptable." The young man with tired eyes nodded slowly. His name was Park and he was 29. Before Protocol Sigma recruited him, he had been serving a life sentence for hacking into military networks of 7 different species. He could break any security system ever created. He could make computers do things their designers thought impossible. The government had given him a choice between a cell and a purpose. He had chosen purpose. A woman with short hair stepped forward. She carried a medical kit over one shoulder and moved with quiet grace. Her name was Cole and she was 41. She had been a combat medic before she discovered she was equally talented at ending lives. She could save a wounded soldier or silence an enemy guard with the same steady hands. Her file said she was a healer. Her file did not mention the blade she kept hidden at her back. "What do we know about the station layout?" asked. Pulled up holographic displays from a portable projector. The station appeared in glowing blue light above the table. He pointed to different sections as he explained. They have divided the hostages into 12 groups. Each group is held in a separate sector with 30 to 40 guards. The main barracks houses about 200 additional soldiers. The command center is here in the central hub. That is where Commander coordinates everything. Studied the layout carefully. They were not stupid. By separating the hostages, they made rescue almost impossible through normal means. Any assault on one sector would give the guards in other sectors time to execute their prisoners. A traditional military operation would result in massive civilian casualties. But Protocol Sigma did not conduct traditional operations. "We will split into 4 groups," said. 3 operatives each. We'll disable their communications first. That gives us a window where they cannot coordinate or call for help. We'll place charges to seal the barracks and trap half their forces. The rest of us will move through the station and eliminate every soldier before they can harm the hostages. Raised an eyebrow. 400 soldiers in how much time? Looked at him calmly. 45 minutes, maybe less. No one in the room questioned whether this was possible. They had all done impossible things before. That was why they were here. Spoke quietly. The commander executed 50 hostages in the last 2 days, 20 more since the initial attack. He broadcasts each execution to show he is serious. He thinks this makes him look strong. His expression did not change, but something cold passed behind her eyes. It makes him look like a target. Over the next several hours, the team reviewed every piece of intelligence they had. They studied biology and learned where their vital organs were located. They memorized guard rotation patterns. They planned approach routes and fallback positions. They prepared equipment that was specifically designed to be lethal against physiology while minimizing risk to human hostages. When they finished, looked around the room with his cheerful smile that never reached his eyes. "So we are really doing this. 12 of us against 400 of them." Shrugged, the odds could be worse. Checked her medical kit one final time. "For them," she said quietly. The team boarded a stealth vessel called the Quiet Knife. It was a ship that did not exist, built with technology that was officially impossible, registered to no government and crewed by no one. It was a ghost ship for ghost soldiers. Stood at the front of the cabin as the ship prepared for departure. She looked at her team. These were people who had given up families and futures and the comfort of ordinary lives. They had become shadows so that others could walk in sunlight. They asked for no recognition and expected no thanks. She spoke only once before they launched. "We are not soldiers today. We are not operatives or agents or specialists. Today we are consequences. They made a choice when they took our people. Now they will learn what that choice costs." The Quiet Knife slipped out of the docking bay and vanished into the darkness between stars. 12 humans traveled toward 400 aliens who did not know death was already on its way. On Arcturus Station, Commander prepared another execution broadcast. He selected 10 hostages at random and had them brought before the cameras. He enjoyed the fear in their eyes. He enjoyed knowing that across human space, millions were watching helplessly. He did not enjoy it for long. In 6 days, he would understand his mistake. In 6 days, he would meet. He would not survive the introduction. The Quiet Knife moved through space like a whisper. Its engines produced almost no heat signature. Its hull absorbed sensor waves instead of reflecting them. To any observer, it was invisible, a shadow passing through shadows. Inside the ship, 12 humans prepared for what was coming. They did not talk much. There was little need for conversation among people who had worked in darkness for so long. They understood each other without words. They cleaned their weapons and reviewed their plans and waited. The journey to Arcturus would take 6 days. 6 days of silence and tension and cold focus. 6 days while Commander continued executing hostages on the station. Every 18 hours, another broadcast. Another group of innocent people murdered for political leverage. The team watched each broadcast in the ship's common room. They did not look away. They did not flinch. They simply absorbed the images and added them to the weight they already carried. Vega stopped making jokes after the second broadcast. Cole's hands grew steadier with each one. Park typed faster on his equipment, his jaw tight with controlled anger. Watched everything with eyes that revealed nothing. She had seen worse things in her career. She had done worse things when duty required. But there was something about watching innocent civilians die while politicians debated that reminded her why Protocol Sigma existed. On the 4th day, called the team together. He had been studying the station's systems through intercepted data and had found something useful. Their communication array has a weakness, explained. They upgraded the station's security, but they used their own military encryption. I can crack it. When I do, I can create a 60-second window where no signals can leave the station. No distress calls. No warnings. Nothing. Nodded approvingly. 60 seconds is enough time to make a lot of noise. Looked at the station blueprints hovering above the table. She pointed to a section near the waste processing facility. This area has no internal sensors. They probably did not bother securing it because there is nothing valuable there. We can dock here and enter through maintenance tunnels. Studied the path from the maintenance tunnels to the hostage sectors. The distances are manageable. If we move quickly and quietly, we can be in position before they know we have arrived. The team continued planning. Each member contributed their expertise. Calculated blast yields for the charges that would seal the main barracks, identified every camera and sensor they would need to avoid or disable, prepared medical stations at key points so wounded hostages could receive immediate treatment. On the 5th day, something changed. A Galactic Assembly diplomatic vessel arrived at Arcturus Station. The Assembly had finally decided to send negotiators. The commander agreed to meet with them. He saw it as an opportunity to demonstrate his power. The team watched the negotiation broadcast from the Quiet Knife. A diplomat named spoke calmly to Commander about finding a peaceful solution. They were known for their patience and wisdom. They had resolved countless conflicts through careful diplomacy. Commander listened politely. Then he ordered his soldiers to bring 30 hostages into the room, women and children and elderly minors who had done nothing wrong. He executed them one by one while the diplomat watched. When it was over, he turned back to the camera. "This is my response to negotiation," he said. "Every cycle you delay, more will die. Give me what I want or watch your people suffer." The broadcast ended. The common room of the quiet knife was silent. His hands were shaking slightly as he worked on his equipment. Had closed her eyes, but her breathing was steady. Sat perfectly still, which was more frightening than any outburst would have been. Stood and walked to the front of the room. Her voice was calm when she spoke. "We move in 12 hours early. I want us in position before their next execution cycle." No one argued. No one needed to discuss the change in schedule. They simply adjusted their preparations and continued working. The final approach began on the 6th day. The quiet knife powered down almost everything except basic life support. It drifted toward Arcturus Station like a piece of space debris, using only tiny bursts of thrust to adjust its course. Any sensor sweep would register it as a rock or a fragment of old satellite. Nothing worth investigating. Inside the ship, the team suited up in silence. Their armor was lightweight but strong, designed for mobility rather than heavy protection. They carried weapons that had been specifically engineered for this mission. Projectile guns with specialized ammunition that would penetrate body armor but fragment on contact with human skin. Blades coated with compounds that were harmless to humans but toxic to blood. Grenades that released gas which would paralyze nervous systems while leaving human lungs unaffected. These were not weapons of war. They were tools of targeted extinction. Distributed medical supplies to each team member. "Even if you are not assigned to a hostage sector," she said, "you might encounter wounded civilians. These injectors will stabilize them until I can reach them. Do not waste time trying to treat serious injuries yourself. Mark the location and keep moving." Handed out the explosive charges, small and powerful and precise. "Place them exactly where I showed you," he reminded everyone. "The timing has to be perfect. Too early and they will have time to react. Too late and our people in the hostage sectors will be overwhelmed." Ran final tests on his equipment. He would be the first one to act. Everything depended on him disabling the communications at exactly the right moment. Checked her weapons one last time. She carried 2 pistols and a short blade in her bare hands, which were weapons enough on their own. She had killed with all of them before. She would kill with all of them again tonight. The quiet knife made contact with the station's hull. Magnetic clamps engaged silently. A cutting tool began slicing through the metal without heat or sparks. Within minutes, a hole large enough for a person appeared in the waste processing sector wall. One by one, the team slipped through the opening into the dark tunnels of Arcturus Station. They moved like ghosts, making no sound, leaving no trace. Above them, 400 soldiers guarded 3,000 human hostages. The soldiers believed they were in control. They believed they were safe. They were wrong about both. Was the last one through the hull breach? She paused for a moment in the darkness and listened to the distant sounds of the station. Somewhere up there, families were huddled together in fear. Somewhere up there, a monster was planning his next execution. Not tonight, she thought. Tonight, we show them what humans become when you threaten our own. She moved forward into the shadows. The hunt had begun. The maintenance tunnels of Arcturus Station were dark and narrow. Pipes ran along the walls and ceiling. The air smelled of recycled oxygen and machine oil. Most species would have found it claustrophobic and disorienting. For the Protocol Sigma team, it was perfect cover. They moved in silence through the maze of passages, had memorized every turn and junction. She led the way with close behind, his equipment ready to disable the station's communications at her signal. The rest of the team followed in pairs, each one knowing exactly where they needed to be when the operation began. The station's internal clock showed 2:47 when they reached their staging positions, had chosen this time carefully. Biology followed a cycle that made them least alert in the hours before their dawn period. Their reaction times would be slower. Their senses would be duller. Every advantage mattered when 12 faced 400. Spoke softly into her communication device. All teams report status. One by one, the responses came, and his partner were in position near the main barracks with charges ready, and her team were near the medical bay, prepared to treat casualties. The remaining teams were positioned outside the sectors where hostages were being held. Everyone was ready. Said begin. His fingers danced across his portable terminal. Lines of code scrolled across the screen. Somewhere in the station systems, security protocols began to fail. Cameras went dark one by one. Sensor grids stopped reporting. The communication array that connected Arcturus Station to the rest of the galaxy went silent. We have 60 seconds of complete blackout reported, starting now. Moved. The first guard never saw her coming. He was standing at a junction point, bored and tired, thinking about nothing important. One moment he was alone. The next moment, a blade slid between the plates of his armor and found his heart. He was dead before he could make a sound, lowered his body gently to the floor and kept moving. Throughout the station, similar scenes played out simultaneously. Protocol Sigma operatives emerged from shadows and ventilation shafts and maintenance hatches. They struck with precision and disappeared again. Guards stationed in isolated positions died one after another without ever raising an alarm. 30 seconds into the operation, triggered his charges. The explosions were carefully controlled. They collapsed specific corridors and sealed blast doors that they had left open for easy movement. In an instant, the 200 soldiers in the main barracks were trapped. They could hear the chaos beginning outside, but they could not reach it. They pounded on the blocked doorways and screamed orders that no one could follow. The remaining 200 were scattered across the station in small groups. They had been positioned to guard hostages and patrol corridors. Now they found themselves cut off from their main force and under attack from enemies they could not see. Reached the first hostage sector with her team. The door was guarded by 4 soldiers who had just realized something was wrong. They were turning to investigate the sounds of explosions when and her partners struck. The fight lasted 11 seconds. They were trained warriors, but they were not prepared for what they faced. Humans moved with speed that seemed impossible for such fragile creatures. They struck weak points that they had never thought to protect. They fought with a cold efficiency that left no room for mercy or hesitation. When it was over, 4 bodies lay on the floor. Opened the door and found 200 terrified humans huddled inside. They stared at her with wide eyes, unable to believe what they were seeing. Stay here, told them. Help is coming. Do not leave this room until we tell you it is safe. She did not wait for them to respond. There were more sectors to clear, more hostages to save, more to kill. The operation became a storm of violence that swept through Arcturus Station. The Protocol Sigma team moved from sector to sector with terrible speed. They coordinated without speaking, knowing instinctively where their teammates would be and what they would need. They killed soldiers who tried to stand and fight. They killed soldiers who tried to run. They killed soldiers who tried to surrender. There would be no prisoners tonight. There would be no survivors among the enemy. That was the message that needed to be sent. And her team worked between the assaults, reaching wounded hostages and providing emergency treatment. She found a young woman with a gunshot wound to her shoulder and stabilized her in under 2 minutes. She found an elderly man who had been beaten by guards and gave him medication for the pain. She moved constantly, saving every life that could be saved. Remained in his position, monitoring the station's systems and feeding information to the teams. He tracked movements and warned operatives when enemies were approaching their positions. He kept the communications jammed so no distress signal could escape. Moved through the station like a force of nature. His explosives had already trapped half the enemy force. Now he used smaller charges to breach doors and create diversions. Every blast was calculated to cause maximum confusion with minimum risk to hostages. 40 minutes into the operation, reached the command center. Commander was inside with his personal guard. He had been trying to restore communications when his systems went dark. He had been trying to coordinate his soldiers when the explosions began. Now he stood in the center of the room, surrounded by 12 of his best warriors, and watched the door with all 4 hands gripping weapons. He did not know what was coming. He only knew that something had gone terribly wrong. The door exploded inward. Gas grenades followed, filling the room with white smoke that burned eyes but left human vision clear. Came through the smoke like a nightmare, moving faster than had believed any human could move. His personal guards lasted longer than the others. They were veterans of many battles. They fought with skill and desperation, but they were fighting something they had never encountered before. They were fighting humans who had been trained to be monsters so that other humans could remain innocent. One by one, the guards fell. Watched his protection disappear until only he remained, backed against a wall with a blade in each of his 4 hands. Stood before him, covered in blood that was not her own. She was not breathing hard. She was not trembling with adrenaline. She simply waited, watching him with eyes that held no emotion at all. "What are you?" demanded. His voice cracked slightly. "Humans are weak, humans are prey. What are you?" Answered calmly. "We are what you made necessary. We are what happens when you touch what belongs to us. We are the reason your species will never threaten humanity again." She moved forward, tried to defend himself. He was a warrior with decades of experience. He had killed countless enemies from many species. It did not matter. The fight ended in seconds. Commander fell to the floor with his blade in his throat. His eyes were still open, still confused, still unable to understand how everything had gone so wrong so quickly. Spoke into her communication device. Command center secured. All teams report status. The responses came one after another. Every hostage sector had been cleared. Every patrol had been eliminated. The soldiers trapped in the barracks were still pounding on sealed doors that would never open for them. Total operation time was 47 minutes. 400 soldiers were dead. 2 Protocol Sigma operatives had sustained minor wounds. 12 hostages had been killed by guards before the teams could reach them. Every other civilian had survived. Looked down its body. He had thought he understood humans. He had thought they were easy targets. He had thought wrong, and now he was dead. The Confederation would receive footage from this night. They would see exactly what had happened to their soldiers. They would see exactly what humans could become when given sufficient reason. They would never make this mistake again. The aftermath of battle is never clean. It is filled with blood and debris, and the sounds of people trying to understand what just happened. Arcturus Station was no different. 3,000 civilians emerged from their holding sectors to find the corridors littered with bodies. Some of them wept with relief. Others stood in shock, unable to process their sudden freedom. Children clung to parents who held them tight and whispered that everything would be okay now. Everything would be okay. Cole and the medical team worked through the night. They treated wounds and stabilized critical patients, and did everything possible to save the 12 hostages who had been injured too badly before the rescue began. They lost 3 of them despite their best efforts. Allowed herself 30 seconds of grief for each one before moving to the next patient. Stood in the command center and surveyed the destruction. She felt nothing. That was normal for her after operations like this. The feelings would come later if they came at all. For now, There was only the cold satisfaction of a mission completed. Park restored the station's communication systems once the operation was over. The first signal that left Arcturus was not a distress call. It was a data package containing helmet camera footage from every Protocol Sigma operative, every kill, every rescue, every moment of the 47-minute operation. That package was sent directly to the Confederation's military command. They would watch it many times in the days to come. They would analyze every second and try to understand how 12 humans had destroyed 400 of their elite soldiers. They would fail to understand because understanding required accepting something their pride would not allow. They had underestimated humans. They had believed the diplomats and traders represented the entire species. They had not known about the monsters that humanity kept hidden in the shadows. Now they knew. The Galactic Assembly diplomatic vessel requested permission to dock 4 hours after the operation ended. Ambassador of the was still aboard, traumatized by the executions he had witnessed but determined to help with the aftermath. He boarded the station expecting to find a horrific scene of ongoing captivity. Instead, he found liberated civilians receiving medical care, while human rescue workers processed the scene. Bate was waiting at the docking bay when the diplomats arrived. She had transported the Protocol Sigma team to their staging area and returned to help with evacuation efforts. Her cargo ship was now ferrying wounded civilians to medical facilities on nearby colonies. Ambassador approached her with confusion visible in his large, silver eyes. "What happened here?" he asked. "We received no reports of an assembly military operation. Our negotiations were still ongoing when we lost contact with the station." Bate looked at him calmly. "There was no assembly operation. Some humans decided to handle the situation ourselves." "But how?" pressed. "Our intelligence indicated 400 soldiers on this station. Where is the rescue force?" Bate shrugged. "They already left." "How many soldiers did it take to defeat 400? Bate paused. She thought about in her cold eyes. She thought about Vega and his cheerful smile that hid something terrible. She thought about all 12 of them, climbing back into the quiet knife and vanishing into the darkness before anyone could thank them or question them or remember their faces. "Enough," Bates said finally. "It took enough." The diplomats filed their reports. Assembly investigators searched the station for evidence of the rescue team. They found nothing. No identification. No equipment left behind. No records of any military vessel in the area. The 12 operatives had become ghosts again, scattered across human space to resume their cover identities and wait for the next time they were needed. Admiral Frank received a private message 3 days after the operation. It contained only 2 words: "Debt paid." He read it once and then deleted it. He would never speak of Protocol Sigma again. He would never acknowledge that it existed. But he would keep the list of 12 names secure, ready for the day when Retribution might need to call again. The Confederation demanded answers from the Galactic Assembly. They wanted to know what kind of weapons the humans had used. They wanted to know where this rescue force had come from. They wanted compensation for their dead soldiers. The Assembly told them nothing because the Assembly knew nothing. Human representatives expressed sympathy for the losses but offered no explanations. Privately, they were just as confused as everyone else. But rumors spread. They always do. Stories passed through criminal networks and military academies and trading posts throughout the galaxy. Stories about humans who could move through shadows and kill without sound. Stories about a rescue operation that should have been impossible. Stories about what happens when you hurt humanity's children. Other species had considered humans easy targets. They had simply been the first to act on that assumption. Now they served as an example. A pirate lord who had been planning raids on human merchant vessels quietly canceled his operations. A warlord who had been negotiating with slavers for human captives ended those negotiations immediately. A dozen different factions across the galaxy looked at Arcturus Station and decided that humans were not worth the risk. 6 months after the rescue, a scout ship encountered a human cargo vessel in neutral space. Under normal circumstances, the scout would have demanded tribute or simply attacked. Instead, the commander looked at the human ship on his sensors and ordered an immediate course change. His crew was confused but obeyed. None of them had been at Arcturus Station, but they had seen the footage. They knew what humans were capable of when provoked. They would rather flee than discover if this particular cargo vessel held anything more dangerous than supplies. Bate watched the scout ship disappear from her sensors. She smiled slightly and returned to her coffee. Her ship, the Steady Dawn, continued on its route towards 7B, just another cargo hauler in an unimportant corner of the galaxy, nothing remarkable at all. Far away, on a quiet colony world where the sky was always blue and the air smelled of growing things, knelt in a small garden behind a simple house. She wore plain clothes and no weapons. Her hands, which had killed 43 soldiers in 47 minutes, gently pruned tomato plants and removed weeds from the soil. A neighbor passed by and waved. "Morning, how is the garden coming along?" Looked up and smiled. It was a warm smile, a normal smile, the smile of an ordinary woman living an ordinary life. "Just fine," she replied. "Everything is growing well." The neighbor continued on, returned to her work. She did not think about Arcturus Station or Commander or the blood she had spilled. She did not think about the people she had saved or the people she had killed. She simply tended her garden and enjoyed the sunshine and waited. Somewhere in the galaxy, someone else might decide to threaten innocent humans. Somewhere, another monster might believe that humanity was weak because its diplomats were kind. Somewhere, another mistake might be made. When that happened, Retribution would call again and would answer. Until then, she had tomatoes to grow.